welcome to our weekly discussion of today's top local, national, world stories with a moral, ethical, and religious point of view. We call it Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHAS Crusade for Children. I'm joined today by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church. Reverend Harriett Akins Banman, New Albany Centenary United Methodist Church. Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ. Greg Earwood, retired Baptist Seminary of Kentucky. And Rabbi Emerita Gaylia, Rooks, the Temple. And a special welcome back to Greg. It's been a while since you've been on the show, so thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yep. So we begin this week with the Democratic National Convention. Kentucky Governor Beshear was one of the main speakers on the first night. Then Tuesday morning, a bit of controversy arose as the governor was a guest on MSNBC.
Today, Governor Andy Beshear and Senator J.D. Vance went head-to-head once again, this time on the topic of abortion. It all started this morning when Andy Beshear appeared on MSNBC.
J.D. Vance calls pregnancy resulting from rape inconvenient. Like, inconvenience is traffic. I mean, make him go through this.
Senator Vance quickly responding on social media, posting the clip, writing, "Why is Andy Beshear wishing that a member of my family would get raped?" End quote. He goes on to call Andy Beshear a, quote, a disgusting person. Earlier this afternoon, the governor appeared on MSNBC once again, and then he clarified his comments.
It's ridiculous, but it's also deflection. I mean, J.D. Vance knows that he and Donald Trump are so wrong on this issue, and so he's trying to make himself the victim.
The Trump-Vance campaign releasing a statement that reads in part, "His comments are disgusting, vile, and should not be tolerated in American politics."
So in the reference to inconvenient comes from a 2021 interview when then Senate candidate Vance said, "It is not whether a woman should be forced to bring a child to term. It's whether a child should be allowed to live even though the circumstances of that child's birth are somehow inconvenient or a problem to society. The question really to me is about the baby." So panel, we come out to you. Your thoughts on what the governor said. Should he apologize? What do you make of the now multiple flare-ups between Beshear and Vance?
Well, I'll go first. I do not think that Governor Beshear was at all saying, "Oh, I wish that someone in J.D. Vance's family would get raped." I mean, that is just so not what he said. He was trying to have a sense of compassion, if not empathy, for a woman who's a victim of rape or incest and chooses to terminate the pregnancy because of that. He wasn't at all meaning, I mean, you know, "Oh, I wish that would happen to someone in your family." And I think that Beshear really hit the nail on the head when he said it's a deflection. And I think that that's a lot of what the Republican Party did at their convention. It was, you know, not talking about the issues, any of the issues. I mean, I just think that they're into making fun of people or crowd size, and it's just, they're not focusing on what Americans need to hear in terms of what are we going to do to help heal our country and move forward and make it better.
I think we all know that abortion has been, and in one sense continues to be, a very hot topic, and it especially flares up at a time like this. I have great respect for Governor Beshear. I didn't hear anything, as Gaylia said, I didn't hear anything in his remarks that would indicate a wish or desire to, you know, have Vance's family affected. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Now, it's going to continue. To your question, you know, what do you make of this? Well, we're going to see more of it, just because any topic where it can be raised to a level of contentiousness, and I'm not saying that's strictly Republican on the Republican side always. You know, Democratic people can be equally clear about their positions, and sometimes in other ways. But I don't know. It's just I know you have to discuss things, topics like this on the moral side. Makes me glad I hadn't been on in a long time.
I don't think it's going to matter what the topic is. It's going to be tit for tat and mudslinging. And I'm glad Governor Beshear is there to be the one to clean that up, or to be the one who can take those topics on and speak to them with a voice of reason, and allow the other candidates to go about their business as the Republican Party, or as Mr. Vance continues to mudsling. The sad part is that when we speak of moral side, we're talking about that which is right versus wrong, right? And the words that we choose speak largely of what our belief system is. So to hear such venom thrown back and forth is disappointing. You know, where is the moral side of word choice and truth speaking in the midst of all of this?
I think about both of them being Kentuckians, and and it's like what is the Hatfield and McCoy? There's going to be this tension. I think that is going to continue because of them being from a certain part of Kentucky, and their values are different. But I think that Governor Beshear speaks with integrity and with a moral compass that we don't have with J.D. Vance. He is here with the people, and Vance is not. And so I think this is just a beginning, and we're going to continue to see that mudslinging, as you said, throughout the rest of the campaign. But I think their battle is because they are both Kentuckians.
I think we'll run into the election season a lot of these moral, cultural issues, and I know that these issues like abortion, whether are for or against, they also make matters of policy, and that's why they're brought up. I think some of it also is around certain issues is about the way they're brought up, the language that we use around it. I'm paying attention to the fact that here's two men talking about sexual violence like a political football. And it is a very serious issue, and I realize there are policy implications that have to happen for an election around these issues, but I think the language around some of these issues needs to be given with some restraint and respect around it because of the gravity of what's there. We're talking about people who are been seriously hurt and victimized, and who are in need of care and compassion. And I've not heard that language in this particular debate. And I would hope that everyone around that agrees around that need for people who are victims of violence. So that's what struck me right away.
And, to get to the actual subject of abortion from a moral and religious perspective, from my religion, there are times when you are obligated to terminate a pregnancy. And if abortion is not safe and legal in this country, then that is not an option. And now with in vitro fertilization, here in Kentucky, we have that case with 3 Jewish women who are, I can't remember the statistic, way over 50% of the abortions in this country, first of all, our first trimester, like 90% or something, but way over 50% are women who already have children. I thought that was interesting. And while I certainly don't believe anyone should be compelled to have an abortion, I don't think that is anyone else's decision. I also don't think that anyone should be forced to carry a child to term if that is going to harm the physical or mental well-being of the mother. And in Judaism, that's, you know, the way the law would go. But I don't expect everyone to follow Jewish law, and I don't expect everyone to follow, you know, Baptist or Catholic or whatever. I mean, that's what Roe v. Wade intended was, you know, and, well, I could go on and on, but someone else want to weigh in here?
But what you're talking about is being able to have dialogue and to have respectful dialogue about these issues, and we are so far away from that.
Well, I want to tell you that yesterday I took my turn at the Kentucky State Fair with the Kentucky Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and I've been a member of that and on the board various times and whatever for decades. And I was nervous about what was going to happen at the fair this year. You know, people coming up and talking and asking questions and stuff. And I want to say that for the 3 hours that I was there, it was totally respectful. There was one gentleman to whom I said, I can tell I'm not going to change your mind, and I can tell you that you're not going to change my mind. And are you registered to vote? I hope you go and vote your conscience and everything. But even, you know, I was trying to get him to move along because nobody else was going to come up while that was going on. But even he was respectful in his language. I mean, you know, he was trying to convert me, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I just want to put a plug out there for Kentuckians and say, or whoever was at the state fair, that I was concerned this year, and I was very happy to see that even people who were totally opposed to what we were saying were very respectful and carefully chose their words. There was no hot under the collar. I guess the guy who was hottest under the collar was very pro-choice and saying, I don't understand why men should even get a vote in this. But anyway, so I just wanted to say that was a pleasant surprise. Yay, people who were at the fair.
And for me and for my tradition, it would be against abortion. And at the same time, I think we would agree that respectful dialogue around these and other moral and cultural issues are really important to have in the election season. The language can get really heated up and can be based on just short phrases and jingos and things like that. And rather, we know that these issues deserve much more thought and contemplation and dialogue and discernment from a community, you know, about seeking out what is best for the common good, what's best for our community.
And in that, it takes a certain amount of willingness to listen and to make oneself vulnerable to listen to an opposing side and to be open to what might be garnered or questions that might arise or new connections, a willingness to be willing to shift or change or even dialogue. And the other piece is respecting the stories that are placed before us that come out of those hard experiences.
There was a couple, I was sharing a story with them of a member of the congregation who had tried for 3 years to get pregnant, did not do IVF, but finally got pregnant, and she had, I don't even remember, some kind of cancer and didn't want to do chemotherapy until after the baby was born. And the family asked me to go visit and talk to her from a Jewish religious perspective, that it falls under the category of the pursuer. If someone is pursuing you to take your life, you are obligated to defend yourself, even if it means killing the other person. But she so much wanted that baby, and even if it meant that she might die, you know, and they're going, there's not an even if. If she doesn't have the proper treatment, she will definitely die. And if she has it, you know, it would terminate the pregnancy anyway, but in a bad way. They had never thought of that, and they were listening. Who said listening respectfully? Was it you, Harriet? Listening respectfully, and I didn't think about that. And then the person I was with started talking about, you know, Texas and how someone with an ectopic pregnancy, and the woman said, I have a friend who had an ectopic pregnancy, and it cut her fertility in half because she lost one of her fallopian tubes.
Right.
But if they hadn't terminated that pregnancy, she would have died. So.
Let's turn now to JCPS. Thank you for that discussion. That could be a whole topic for an hour-long show. But you all, if we can't have the conversation among ministers and difference of opinions, who can? So thank you for your
Well, I thought that's
honesty.
what those balls were for, in case we want to know.
We turn now to JCPS. After last year's busing disaster, what a difference a year has made for the return to school and the new transportation plan.
Because of this new plan just implemented this year, every single bus rider was dropped off before 7 p.m. the first day of school. Now, with a smooth first day under their belts, the school board is now looking at ways to bring buses back to the schools transportation was cut from.
1 year ago, it was this. And to have it end with the transportation disaster that we had last night was truly unacceptable.
Now, a year later, the new way Superintendent Marty Polio is describing back to school.
As difficult as last year's start was, this year has been an amazing start to the school year.
The first JCPS school board meeting after students headed back to school, the board announced that transportation could be reinstated to some magnet and traditional schools who had transportation cut this year. And the latest on the plan:
give those new bus drivers, those truck drivers, their routes that last week of September and practice over the fall break, and then we would implement those if we get the 60 right when they come back from fall break.
It would mean buses would return for certain students, not all, at Butler, DuPont Manual, Louisville Male, and all students at Johnson Traditional, Coleridge Taylor, and Young. But they need 60 trained and certified TARC drivers before that can happen. Polio said right now 19 TARC drivers have a school bus certification, 39 are currently testing, and 12 others are in various stages of training.
We can give the written portion of the test, but the driver portion of the test is done by the Kentucky State Police Department, so we have really little control over that. And then, having them pass that driver test. If they do not succeed in that test, then there has to be practice and work done with the drivers in order to get there.
385 students who left their magnet or traditional school because transportation was cut would be eligible to go back if transportation was reinstated.
And once we get above 60 drivers, which we believe we will, we have to survey the families to see which of those eligible want transportation back to their schools, survey those students who may have left their school to see if they want to return to that school.
Polio says all TARC drivers should be trained and certified by the end of August or beginning of September.
So not everyone was happy with the new plan. Some losing bus service, carpool lines, very long carpool lines at many schools. Your thoughts on the improvements year over year and possible path forward returning to bus service for all?
Oh my word. It's just like fruit basket turnover, and the basket keeps turning over and over and over. I'm grateful, that they think it started well. For a student to last drop off be at 7 o'clock at night, I'm still wondering, if I'm waiting for my child at 7, is that a win? The other concern is all of the shifts that, again, happen within the schools if students leave and have to and go back to their school of choice, which would be lovely. But then what happens in the classroom and the teachers and just that domino effect of the transportation piece that the transportation piece causes is just, for me, kind of mind-boggling.
Well, those students were already planning to go to magnet schools or traditional schools. I don't think that magnet school families should be penalized because they want their kid to go to a magnet school or a traditional school. They're still public schools, and we, in my opinion, are obligated to provide transportation for them. We, in our strange little household of 2 rabbis and a special needs kid and a daughter going, she would have had to get up at the crack of dawn to get down to No Middle School or Y-Pass. So we elected to drive her because it meant more than an extra hour of sleep. And that's a lot for a kid, and they need that sleep. But that was a choice that we were able to make. You know, my husband and I would balance our schedules and this and that. He did most of the driving, absolutely. But I thought the kids getting home at 7 this year were because they were doing after-school activities. I may be wrong, but my understanding was that no one gets home at 7 if they take the buses when school ends.
I was referring to that first
The first
day.
Oh, you're
day.
talking about,
That
okay.
was the success of the 1st
I'm sorry.
day.
Yeah.
7
Well,
p.m. versus 10
I'm sorry.
p.m.
Yes.
But then there are those
before.
families who can't do what you
Right,
has
that's
been
what
able
I'm
to do. So
saying. I
that's
mean,
what's upsetting.
we are very fortunate
Right.
that we could handle that. But I mean, something needs to be done, and I think that they're trying to do it. I mean, I don't know why they didn't know that they'd have enough bus drivers and be working on that over the whole summer, but I do believe that Marty Polio is a good superintendent. He definitely cares about what's best for JCPS and the students and families, and hopefully this is all going to work. I just don't know why the timeline wasn't, I mean...
Yeah. Well, I think what we see is proper planning for a transition like this is important. And perhaps if they had done this 2 years ago, then we would not have had the mess that we had last year. And so I think as a result of that planning, we're seeing a better implementation of the school system. But I also see that partnerships with other organizations are what is helping to make this possible. You know, realizing that TARC was in the process of laying off workers and them being able to work with JCPS is a tremendous benefit, not only for TARC, but also JCPS. And so when, you know, I'm a believer of partnerships between organizations. And so this partnership is something that I think is going to benefit the schools, the children, but I would hope that even more organizations or companies would step up to know that when we're working together to improve the situation, the education for our children, then it's worth it. It's worth it for them, but it's worth it for our community.
I read on it that when the transportation problems happened last year, that it created a lot of stress. Everyone knows that. Stress on the board, stress on the superintendent, on parents, on children. There was, you could sense a lot of that. So I'll take a guess and say that what stress does is that if you let it happen, it can, if you use it the right way, it can make you creative. I look at this as a creative response to a problem. And it sounds to me like a good one. And it sounds to me like what I hope for, following what Jamesetta said, that it's a win-win. So it's a win for Jefferson County Public Schools, its students and its teachers and parents. It's a win for them, and also could be a win for TARC and bus drivers as well for them. And I think, wow, that's a great decision. And really good. And it's also the timeline. They're only looking at August. They're not saying, well, by next year we'll have all of these. They're saying, anticipating pretty soon. I'd say, well, that should be something to celebrate if that happens and it works well. And I think it went kind of slow because acknowledging, or a problem came that there just weren't enough drivers, I think really was the fuel behind a lot of the problems. And that sort of came up, but it was also a national issue too, when we were going through the sense of really not having a lot of workers in our industries as a whole. It seems to be that we had a worker shortage. And so it came about, really because of that. And this became ultimately a response that the community discerned through. And I think it sounds to me like as it goes along, it could be a real effective one. I'm happy about that.
Greg?
Well, I don't have a dog in this fight because I live in Scott County, and although I have grandchildren here, and my first thought was, I don't know what all is involved in scheduling and planning. I cannot even imagine what it takes to put all of that together. But people are paid to do that, and people oversee it. And I'm glad to hear that you're very affirming of the superintendent. Because, really the bottom line is kids, and what makes their situation the most conducive for their education. And there are a lot of complications and issues around this. So sounds like there's improvement, from looking the outside looking in. And I just hope that they'll continue to evaluate, and in September there'll be a even better way of thinking about where we are and what can be done.
And it really was a perfect storm last year because, to your point, it was the shortage of bus drivers and the new busing plan, the new system they put in all at the same time, and they just didn't. There wasn't enough time to make it work properly. So.
Well, and deep appreciation for those who serve on the board and their leadership and just working at it so diligently.
I thought that they might fire polio over, last year, what had happened. I mean, I was glad that they didn't, but it was a perfect storm. And of course, safety of the children is the most important thing. You can't just have anyone driving the school bus.
Absolutely.
Someone who can also be responsible for what's going on in the bus at the time. That's what would scare me, having been bullied on a school bus occasionally.
And we have to mention Corey on our own panel as president of the board, and he's doing a really good job, and we're glad he's part of our team here as well. We have just about a minute left. Real quick, Ender, to end on a good note. Your favorite state fairs going on. Your favorite state fair food?
I was there for 3 hours yesterday, and in my 10-minute break, I went shopping instead of eating.
No funnel cake?
No, nothing.
Harriett wanted to tell.
Oh, funnel cake, hands down.
Really?
Wow.
I love funnel cake.
Yeah, you can deep fry, whatever, but I want a funnel cake.
Someday I'm going to try the fried butter.
Fried butter?
I don't know about that.
I know. I've never even had a fried Twinkie, so I don't know.
Yeah, the funnel is so traditional, like the funnel cake.
Yes, I love funnel cake.
Our fair is coming up, and that is my favorite. I will be there for that. Yeah.
Father John, Jamesetta, any favorites?
I haven't been to the fair in 20 years, so I need to go see what's out there.
You need a funnel cake.
I walked by a booth that was roasting nuts with, sweet things on them and this and that, and I think I gained 2 pounds just walking by.
We got about 15 seconds.
There's a lot of good things that farmers do that is also sold at the fair too. So on a more serious sense, you can taste some Kentucky-made foods there. Very good.
I like the corn on the cob myself. Very good. Special thanks to our guest this week, Father John Stoltz, Reverend Harriett Akins Banman, Jamesetta Ferguson, Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, Greg Earwood, and Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks. Thanks for joining us this week. Thanks for watching and listening. Join us again next week for an all-new Moral Side of the News.